X-ray. Good morning and welcome to X-Ray in the Morning, the show of shows.
Yay!
Here's the latest weather report. Rain and cooler.
Time for news and commentary. I'm Jefferson Smith.
Good news, everyone!
Nerd alert! So what did we learn this morning?
I learned that there's a storm coming.
You did learn that.
It's like a bowl of grape nuts for your mind.
Sleepy, it's rainy, it's dark, but feeling good.
Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning. It's Friday.
Friday.
And it's starting to be light out when we arrive.
I know. It's more DJ Sunshine time than it is DJ Gray. I don't know why you never remember your DJ name.
DJ Gray City. Just look out. Look where you are.
Just open your eyes and you will see my name. It's like a really poetic statement.
Yeah. Really?
How's your week been going?
I'm good.
Okay. Cool.
Do you have a love hangover?
A love? Oh, because yesterday was Valentine's Day. I was like, Hannah, what are you insinuating? No.
Okay, me either. Move on.
No, what did you do did you do something nice for yourself for Valentine's Day?
Well, what I did was look in the Portland Mercury to see, those ones that are written up, all those.
Oh, I forgot about those.
And try to see is like, oh, is there one for me? Did somebody use a random nickname they call me or like do that?
And was there?
Not that I could tell.
What were some of the nicknames that you were possibly like, that could be me?
DJ Gray City. X-Ray and the News Girl.
X-Ray and the News Girl. There's a couple of us.
Yeah. There was a couple to Hannah, and I was like, ugh, those are not me.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Guaranteed.
She's like pulling her collar away from her neck. I didn't look in the Mercury. I forgot about that. I'll have to look today.
They'll be there all week.
I did eat a bunch of chocolate and drink like 3 glasses of wine.
Ooh.
And it was because I love myself. It was lovely. Anyway. Oh, Valentine's Day, the day for people who are already in relationships. News. Should we get to the news?
Sure. Let's read one story at least.
Let's read one story. No, it's going to be good. We have some actually really interesting news, including this extremely important kind of insane story.
What's going to happen today?
Well, Trump is expected to declare a national emergency as well as sign a spending bill. On Thursday, the White House confirmed that President Trump intends to sign the bipartisan spending bill agreed to by Congress, averting another partial government shutdown. But at the same time, he will declare a national emergency in order to get additional funding for his border wall. By Thursday evening, Congress had easily passed the bipartisan spending bill, crafted by lawmakers from both chambers. The vote was 83-16 in the Senate and 300-128 in the House. The proposal only includes $1.375 billion for border barriers and increases other border security funding, far short of the $5.7 billion that Trump originally demanded for his wall. His wall. I'm going to write Trump like huge, it'll just be like, it'll be branded. What a horrible
He'd like
thought.
that.
I know he would. In a statement, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said, quote, President Trump will sign the government funding bill, and as he has stated before, he will also take other executive action, including a national emergency, to ensure we stop the national security and humanitarian crisis at the border. The president is once again delivering on his promise to build the wall, protect the border, and secure our great country. Trump is expected to sign the spending bill and declare a national emergency later this morning. The emergency declaration is likely to be met with several legal challenges, including one from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who said after the announcement that it's one option Democrats will consider. So, that's some news, huh?
Yeah, and it looks like our producer is saying Trump is planning a 10:30 announcement in the Rose Garden.
That's too
Rose
pretty,
Garden, not ours.
pretty of a place to,
I know.
not in the Portland. He's just hanging out in
coming
Washington
to
Park. Why? Yeah, man, this is not the city where you would want to declare that you're building a wall.
Right.
It would throw birds at you until...
I mean, we've never seen anything like this move in
No.
politics yet.
No.
So
We have it, and I don't know enough about the legalities, and I was kind of looking it up last night. But this is rather complicated because I think once the president declares an emergency, there's not a whole lot
all
that
hell breaks loose.
Well, yeah, kinda. It's I don't think there's a whole lot that Congress can do about it, but I mean, this is money, right? So the money, I believe, will be coming from the National Defense, like construction fund, and that's a pretty. I mean, like we don't think about it very often, but that's a pretty important pot of money that goes to build again, like all kinds of things that we don't think about, and to just decide that you are going to declare. I mean, really, it's like I mean, I say this all the time, but he's like a toddler.
Yeah, I just want to say I started to look up like what happens in a national emergency, and that's like my computer knew I wanted to say that when I just said what happens. It's like I think everybody across the country
I'm sure
is like,
we're not the only people.
what is gonna go on? So it's like, what money does he get at, or like, yikes.
But that's a really good question that I haven't considered. Like, what are the other consequences of declaring a national emergency? Like, what else can you do?
And can you just think of all the other things that we actually could declare a national emergency about?
Oh, you mean like when cities are underwater, or when like people don't have access to
clean water,
or like when cities burn down and nobody has any place to stay and all the houses and hotels are completely booked up.
Yeah, like public health crisis.
Yeah, those might be emergencies.
Crisis.
I just can't.
Other things
like,
that are like,
what does he think
intense.
is happening at the border? I can't, like, in my mind, you know that scene from Game of Thrones where like,
no,
like all of a sudden,
never watched the show.
Okay, well, do you know what dragons look like?
Yes.
Like, just imagine there's like
picture it.
a bunch of dragons and they're coming over the wall and they're coming to kill. Like, that's when I think of like crisis at the border, that's what I think of. I don't think of like a group of refugees who have left their home country because obviously there's something worse going on in their home country than crossing miles and miles of desolate desert.
I'm like pulling my bangs because
she's literally
I just think about, we already know that also the folks who are here that he's saying he's concerned about have overstayed their visa. You know, it's not a crisis of people literally climbing over the border. So yeah. Has somebody called in?
Do we have someone else on the line? No? Oh, yay. Hi.
Oh. Tom, you snuck up on us.
It must be Talk Media News.
Well, I didn't mean to. I usually, come in shouting, right?
Yeah. Declare yourself.
It was good. It was very subtle. So this must be Talk
Happy
Media
Friday.
News. Yes. Happy Friday to you as well, Tom Sequiri. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks.
What do you have for us today? I'm imagining news about the wall.
Well, there's a lot of things. Actually, it's a pretty newsy morning. The wall, of course, dominates the discussion. But, we have a funding bill that should be signed this morning by the president, and then he says he's going to declare a national emergency. And probably before the end of the day, if I was a betting individual, I would place a bet that there would be a court challenge sometime, if not one, several, if not just one, on the legality, constitutionality of it and other aspects of it. And so, he does his political move, and opponents of it will do their move, and it'll sit there until it goes through the courts, and nothing will change essentially on the border in regards to a wall other than money that's already been appropriated or obligated for that expenditure. Meanwhile, the government gets funded, which is good for lots of people, including the government workers,
right,
who get a pay raise in this legislation.
Really interesting.
Things.
I didn't know
we forget that it's a funding bill. It's not. All the focus has been on the wall and border security, but this funds the government, and there's a bunch of things in there which I haven't gone through them all. I covered the Pentagon, and the Pentagon was already funded last year, so my immediate need to go through that legislation is not as great as normal. Mm-hmm. But I know that they get a pay raise, and there's some other things in there for people. It's a regular money bill, and there's stuff that's in there. So that's good in the sense that they find a bipartisan solution quickly, and that's promising.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. We had a question for you. If the wall does go through, if if they're unable to stop the wall from being built, do you know? I know it's a military defense fund that normally goes to like construction projects. Do you know what that fund is usually for?
Yeah, I do. I can give you a little bit of insight on that. One of the areas that President Trump expects to take money from is the military construction budget.
Mm-hmm.
That's separate from the defense budget. It's for the military, but it's a different appropriation. There's $21 billion in what's called unobligated money in that fund. Military construction projects are funded over a 5-year period.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say there's going to build a hospital in Omaha, a military hospital in Omaha, and it was started in 2018. So some of it's completed, but not all of it's completed yet because that's how contracts are. The money that has been set aside for it, let's just say $10 million, $5 million may have been spent. The rest of the $5 has to be given to contracts. It hasn't yet, so that money is eligible to be taken by the president as unobligated funds, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the hitch about military construction funds, this adds a second layer to those court challenges I mentioned before. Military construction funds can be used for other purposes as long as they relate to the military, okay? So in this case, building a border wall may not relate to the military, one could argue. So that could be a second layer of legal challenges to the president using those monies. He also plans to use money from drug interdiction funding to stop drugs coming in, and some other areas such as seizures of property and stuff, which I'm not real clear on how that works, to be honest with you.
Interesting. So then it would be up to a judge whether or not this wall would be considered military building.
I would guess so. And then if there's $21 billion, as I said, he expects to take $8 billion from the military construction budget. That would then be left up to the Pentagon to decide which projects that money would come from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all the money for this year, the current year, fiscal year 2019, $10 billion in military construction funds for this year, none of that has been obligated yet because they're still in the process of going through contract bids and proposals and such. So it's likely, just as a guess, but probably a lot of that money would come from the current year pot where it hasn't been started spending yet, as opposed to projects that are already underway and need completed.
Does that mean that this year there are just no projects that are important enough to build?
No, that doesn't mean that at all. It means that, remember, the fiscal year begins in October, so we're about 3 months into it. That means that they're acquiring contracts and they're starting the process of assigning the work and that kind of thing. It doesn't move that quickly. That's why the projects are always funded over a 5-year period to permit that. Depending on the project, there has to be environmental action statements and so forth. I would have to go through, and we weren't given this. You have to go through each project and figure out what the status is. And the Pentagon is not. They don't like to supply that information.
It's the Pentagon, aren't they known for keeping secrets?
You know, it strikes me, they are known, but it just baffles me. They knew this was coming, and they keep saying, interestingly enough, the $21 billion, I think you guys are like this, the $21 billion figure came from congressional staff who know this stuff cold. The Pentagon had been maintaining all along is only going to be $2 or $3 billion that they could take from military construction. So they either deliberately were lowballing reporters or they were unclear as to how much money was even there, which is scary as well.
I don't think either would surprise me. Tom Squitieri,
exactly.
Right? Tom Squitieri,
that's what I was thinking.
What else do we have going on in the world today? I mean, all the news is about the wall, but I know there are some other really big political things happening.
Well, there are. But I always like to, if possible, bring at least a glimmer of possible good news.
Yeah,
and one of them is this. This is esoteric. It involves Venezuela, but President Maduro, he's the current president who's under opposition from the United States and many nations of the world, has sent an envoy to meet with Elliot Abrams, who's the special U.S. envoy to Venezuela, to try to talk about a political solution to the crisis. And he's invited Elliot Abrams to come to Venezuela to continue the negotiations, the conversations, however you want to characterize it. To me, it's a good news because anytime they're talking is better than shooting. I think I mentioned on the show last week that, Mexico, to keep an eye on Mexico, who's trying to play a diplomatic role in it, to either give Maduro a way out or to help set up new elections that everybody can come in and monitor perhaps and declare them, better than the last one. So I look at that, because I'm always optimist at heart that things can work out for the better, that this may end a dangerous situation in a diplomatic way and set the stage for another round of elections, and then hopefully get that country back on economic footing, because it's really in desperate situation in Venezuela.
Yeah, it really is.
So that's my good news for the morning anyway.
I think it's really good news for the people of Venezuela who,
And for us too. I mean, really for the region. Venezuela had a strong economy. It was a leading nation in South America for a long time, and obviously the oil production is important to the country and to others, and also from a perspective of Western democracy. Without the United States and Western nations involved in countries like Venezuela, you leave it open to Russia, Cuba, and China, and those who don't have as strong democratic principles as the United States. That may be an understatement, but so it's important for everybody that Venezuela gets back on track economically, and thus giving it options politically.
Yeah,
Do you think he's gonna let the U.S. know where he's hiding the billions in oil money?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think he will. I don't think that that's sort of far down on the list of. I think the United States wants him to step down. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think if there's a way that they could arrange for new elections, the United States and the other Western nations certainly would say, okay, that's a positive step. We'll come in and we'll monitor them, et cetera, and let's see how the vote turns out. I would guess that the United States would hope that he would lose that vote, obviously, and the indications are he may lose a fair vote, and that would be the best way to end the situation, other than him just abdicating, which I think is less likely.
We will have to pay attention, and I mean, this would be extremely good news if they can work something out.
Yeah, it would be.
Tom Squitieri, any other big ticket items that you want to talk about that we should be looking out for over the weekend?
Over the weekend, it's supposed to snow, so
Where?
Everywhere. It's snowing everywhere I think, in the world today.
Yeah, we heard that last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congress is out of town next week because it's the president's holiday on Monday.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
And so this will give them a week to go back in the sense of their home districts and home states to hear what people were saying and get feedback on the president's decision today. That it's a good time to take a break from Washington for them, maybe, with this done. And
just do some self-care.
Get an earful perhaps and some thoughts on how to go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tom Squitieri, I think we're about out of time. Thank you so much for being here with us.
All right. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you next week, hopefully.
You as well. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
That was Talk Media News, made possible by our sponsor, Beth Ernest & Associates Real Estate. Beth Ernest's team of real estate brokers have been serving the Portland area for over 22 years, specializing in residential real estate, lots and land. More at bethernest.com. I think we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. This is X-Ray. Radio is yours.